On a cold night in November 1988, a 17-year-old girl named Junko Furuta was cycling home from her part-time job in Saitama, Japan. She never made it back, and what followed was 41 days of the most calculated, systematic cruelty ever recorded in modern history.
I've heard this name before. It's usually whispered in true crime circles as the gold standard for how far human depravity can go. But wasn't this done by kids?
That is the most haunting part. Her captors were teenagers who turned a family home into a literal chamber of horrors, while the world outside just kept moving. Today, we're looking at the Concrete-Encased high school girl murder, a case that didn't just break hearts, it broke Japan's faith in its own legal system. The nightmare began on November 25th, 1988. 18-year-old Hiroshi Miyano and his three younger associates, Joe Kamiya, Nobuharu Minato, and Yasushi Watanabe, decided they wanted to kidnap a girl. They saw Junko, kicked her off her bike, and then Miyano played the hero by pretending to help her, only to lure her into a trap.
So it wasn't a crime of passion or a random burst of violence. This was a targeted abduction from second one?
Exactly. Miyano wasn't just a delinquent. He had ties to the Yakuza and used that reputation to rule through fear. He took Junko to the Minato family home in Adachi, Tokyo, where they would hold her for the next 6 weeks.
Wait, you said the Minato family home. Were the parents there while this girl was being held captive?
They were. This is one of the most sickening layers of the story. The parents were reportedly in the house for most of those 41 days. They later claimed they were too terrified of their own son and his gang to intervene or call the police. Over those 41 days, Junko was subjected to thousands of acts of sexual violence and torture. The perpetrators didn't just hurt her, they turned her suffering into a game. They invited over 100 other local teenagers to the house to participate, ensuring a wall of silence through shared guilt.
How does a neighborhood full of people and 100 different kids not result in a single anonymous tip to the police?
There actually was a chance. Early on, Junko managed to dial the police when she was left alone for a moment, but when officers showed up, the boys convinced them it was just a prank, and the police left without searching the house. That was her last lifeline.
That is a catastrophic failure. What happened after that?
The torture escalated to levels that are difficult to even describe. They used lighters, golf clubs, and iron weights. They forced her to eat insects and drink urine. By early January 1989, after losing a game of mahjong, the group took their frustration out on her one final time. They doused her in lighter fluid and set her on fire.
And she didn't survive that.
No. She died on January 4th from a combination of neurogenic shock and internal organ failure. To hide the evidence, they put her body in a 200-liter oil drum, filled it with wet concrete, and dumped it in a landfill in Koto. The case only broke because one of the boys, Joe Kamiya, couldn't stop bragging about what they had done.
Now, surely, for a crime this horrific, the justice system threw the absolute book at them, right?
That's where the second tragedy begins. Because they were minors under Japanese law, the court prioritized their rehabilitation. The ringleader, Miyano, only got 20 years. The others got as little as 5 to 10 years. The public was so livid that a major magazine broke the law to publish the boys' real names and faces.
Did the rehabilitation actually work? Did they ever express remorse?
Far from it. This is the part that still haunts Japan today. Several of these men went on to commit more crimes after their release. Joe Kamiya was arrested again in 2018, nearly 30 years later, for attempted murder after stabbing a man. It proved to many that the original sentences were a joke.
It sounds like the system protected the predators while the victim was completely forgotten by the law.
It sparked a massive national debate that eventually led to Japan lowering the age of criminal responsibility. Junko's story became a symbol of bystander apathy, the idea that evil only wins when everyone else chooses to look the other way to stay safe.
It's a heavy story, Alex. What's the one thing we should take away from the life and death of Junko Furuta?
Remember that justice fails not just when evil people act, but when institutions and neighbors prioritize their own comfort over a cry for help.
That's Wikipedia, every story on demand. Search your next topic at wikipedia.ai.